Aquatic ecosystems are areas that are partially or fully covered in water. Some aquatic ecosystems contain very deep water, like the middle of the ocean, while other aquatic ecosystems, like tidal pools, are only covered by water during high tide. The plants and animals that live there must be specially adapted to live both on land and in water. They contain either salt water or fresh water. Abiotic factors in aquatic environments determine which animals and plants are able to live where they do. There are three main abiotic factors that affect what types of life thrive in different aquatic ecosystems. The first factor is depth. As the sun shines on water, it's only able to reach a certain depth. Water reflects a lot of sunlight, which is why it's so easy to get sunburned if you're spending time in or on the water. So the deeper you go in water, the less light is able to reach. If you go deep enough, no light is able to penetrate at all. The photic zone is the part of the aquatic ecosystem that receives light, and the aphotic zone is the deeper part that doesn't get any light at all. All plants must live in the photic zone so that they can undergo photosynthesis and make food for themselves. Algae is a group of important aquatic plants that serve as food source for many of the fish that live in aquatic ecosystems. They're very diverse and include seaweed, giant kelp, what you might call pond scum, that greenish film that grows on the surface of ponds, as well as the slippery green stuff that grows on rocks near the surface of water. In fact, how green, or you might call it scummy, a body of water appears is a good indication of the health of that body of water, because it indicates the presence of nutrients and life. The crystal clear blue water of the Caribbean is actually very unhealthy water because nothing can live there. The second abiotic factor that determines what kind of life can live in different aquatic environments is temperature. The water near the equator is warmer because of the intense sunlight. Currents move warm water away from the equator. The Gulf Stream is an important current in the Atlantic Ocean that brings warm water from the Gulf of Mexico up to Europe. In fact, without the Gulf Stream, Europe would be as cold as Canada. Dissolved nutrients in the water also determine which plants and animals are able to live in particular aquatic ecosystems. It might seem like a good thing to have lots of nutrients in the water, but too many nutrients can actually be bad. Nitrogen and phosphorus are nutrients that are important to life, and often are the limiting factor in how fast and how much things can grow. That's why they're the main components of fertilizer. However, when fertilizer gets dissolved in groundwater, and then that water is transported to the ocean through rivers and streams, lots of nutrients can build up in one part of the ocean. It causes bacteria and algae to reproduce out of control and use up another important nutrient in the water, dissolved oxygen. That makes it difficult for other organisms like fish to live in the water and create what's called a dead zone. At the base of the Mississippi River in the ocean off of the Gulf Coast is a giant dead zone the size of Connecticut. Salt is an abiotic factor in water that separates bodies of water into two groups, saltwater and freshwater. Freshwater ecosystems are divided into three types, depending on how much water is present and whether or not that water is moving. Rivers and streams are freshwater ecosystems that involve moving water. They often originate from water in mountains or hills and flows downwards from there. As it flows, it brings sediment like sand and dirt with it. Lakes and ponds are generally more stagnant, meaning they don't move very much. They typically are deeper than rivers and streams. Their depth allows for cycling of water and nutrients. Cold water sinks while warm water rises. As warm water rises, it brings with it sediment and nutrients from the bottom of the lake or pond, and as the cold water sinks, it takes with it algae and other microscopic creatures that typically live on the surface. Wetlands are the shallowest type of freshwater ecosystems. They include marshes and swamps. Water covers the soil or is present near the surface at least part of the year. Water may be still or it may be flowing. Wetlands are typically very nutrient-rich, and they have three important functions. First of all, they serve as breeding grounds for many organisms. Fish like salmon travel to wetlands where they lay their eggs, and then once hatched, the fish will swim back out to larger bodies of water. Their second important function is that they purify water by filtering it through the rocks at the bottom. They also help prevent flooding of larger bodies of water by serving as sort of an overflow area. Estuaries are wetlands that contain salt water. Rivers flow into the sea and mix salt and fresh water in estuaries. Like freshwater wetlands, estuaries are important breeding grounds for fish and shellfish. Estuaries contain unique plant life. Grasses and trees that grow there must be tolerant of higher concentrations of salt than most plants. Mangrove trees grow in estuaries in the southwestern coastlines of the Florida Everglades. They have special adaptations to living in salt water. They draw in water through their roots like other trees, but then deposit the salt into leaves near the bottom of the plant and shed those leaves. Another important estuary in the United States is the Chesapeake Bay. A lot of seafood comes from the northeast due to the presence of the Chesapeake Bay. Marine ecosystems are another name for ocean ecosystems. They contain salt, so plants and animals that live there are different than the freshwater plants and animals. The ocean is divided into zones based on how deep it is, as well as how far from the shore it is. Based on how deep the ocean is and how much light it receives, it's divided into the photic and the aphotic zones. Moving from near the shore to far from the shore is the intertidal zone, coastal ocean, and open ocean. The intertidal zone, like its name suggests, is the area that's submerged in water during high tide and does not contain water during low tide. It usually contains tall grasses, small fish, and insects. The coastal ocean is the area from where the water touches during low tide to the edge of the continental shelf. You will see in the picture in just a minute that there's a steep drop-off after the continental shelf, so the coastal ocean is relatively shallow water, but that doesn't mean you'll always be able to reach the bottom if you're swimming in the coastal ocean. The coastal ocean is characterized by bright light and many nutrients from runoff from the land. The very deepest part of the ocean is called the open ocean. All along the bottom of all three zones is the benthic zone. This is the top layer of sediment where benthos live. Benthos are the aquatic organisms that live in or on the sediment and rocks in the bottom of a body of water. They include things like algae, bacteria, and worms. Here's a diagram that shows you where each of the zones of the ocean are located. You'll notice closest to the shore is the intertidal zone. Moving further out is the coastal ocean. Then the deepest parts of the ocean is the open ocean. The top of the ocean is called the aphotic zone, where light is able to penetrate. At deeper depths, where light is not able to penetrate, is the aphotic zone. The open ocean is located beyond the continental shelf. To give you an appreciation of how large the oceans are on the surface, the open ocean where algae lives is actually where the most photosynthesis on Earth takes place. Even more photosynthesis takes place here than in the rainforest. The open ocean doesn't contain many nutrients. A lot of the nutrients that are present in the ocean come from runoff from the land, so they don't make it out to the middle of the ocean. The aphotic zone of the ocean is one of the harshest environments on Earth. Because sunlight doesn't reach the bottom of the ocean, it's very cold and dark. All of the water above creates high pressures. In fact, while scuba diving, your ears can pop even more than when you're on an airplane, even if you don't scuba dive very deep. But the changes in pressure require that your ears rebalance themselves and pop.